So today's topic is menstruation practices in Hinduism, what and why. Yes, it is a offbeat topic, but I think nevertheless it is equally a very important topic. Menstruation is one of the, all adult women go through it. It affects them, influences them at a very deeper level, biological, emotional, spiritual, psychological. Yet, despite its so vital role in a woman's life, the current narrative, you can watch TV, online, debates, everywhere, the current narrative is highly reductive. It reduces the whole issue of menstruation into two things. One is sanitary napkins, and second is the narrative of oppression and superstition in the context of Hindu practices specifically. In fact, 2 weeks back, I came across a documentary video in Twitter wherein somebody had, about this Hindu practices, they had made a nice video. There was a court scene. The couple was there. The husband stood accused, and in front of him, the wife was there as the victim. So, husband was accused of oppressing his wife every month during her monthly periods. So, the video shows how the wife was segregated, separated from her children, not allowed to interact with them, and how this husband is superstitious person who calls it's a period of impurity, but he doesn't know what impurity means. Apart from the fact that the video was in poor taste because it stereotyped South Indians, it showed a typical Tamilian couple, but leaving that aside, it stereotyped everything. It stereotyped the whole Hindu conception, Hindu practices around menstruation. It reduces the whole narrative into a single category of impurity and interpreted that category also using the concepts like oppression and superstition. So in this background, with this context, it becomes very vital, especially for the new people, the new generation, the new practicing Hindus, and also the parents, everybody. It becomes vital to understand what these practices are. See, we can make a judgment, we can come to a conclusion only after there is an unbiased examination, not on basis of preconceived notions. So towards this direction, I have designed this presentation, Hindu menstruation practices, what and why. The very first slide is what of menstruation practices. I have summarized some of the practices which is common, prevalent across India. First is no sexual intercourse. That is one of the most prevalent, not only in India but across the world. No running, no exercise, no cooking and other household activities. No bathing, no combing, no application of makeup and other body grooming activities. Some amount of segregation like not touching others. Restrictions related to food, restriction related to performance of religious and spiritual activities. This is another one huge issue. Why should not menstruating women enter temples? Why should not she participate in religious ceremonies, etc. The contrary to these practices, it's a apparent contradictory. It's not a contradiction. It just appears to be an opposite. There is a celebration of menarche, the onset of menstruation, across different communities in India, and we also worship. There are traditions within India which worship certain goddesses, certain menstruating goddesses. So how do we understand the whole thing? How do we understand this what of menstruation practices of Hinduism? But before going to the how, it is important. I have in my interaction with a lot of people, young, old, with different strata of society, I have found two extremes in how the people react to this issue. On the one hand, what I call are there traditionalists who are very faithful towards the tradition. They follow the practices faithfully to the best of their efforts, but also mechanically, If you ask them why you practice it, they do not have an answer. They say it is a tradition. We have got this from our ancestors. But why? They don't know. Because they don't know, they are not open to questions. They will not entertain questions. You say, why this practice? Give me a reason that I will not practice. They say, shut up and simply practice. On the other hand, we have the other extreme, whom I have termed modernist. They equally reject everything faithfully and also, of course, mechanically. They say all this is superstition. There is nothing in it. Menstruation is a biological process. Yes, nothing is there. It's all superstition. Let us reject everything. They neither have patience to investigate, to look for an answer, to look for the answer for the question why, and more importantly, they do not even care. They are already made their conclusions that this must be a superstition in 21st century rooted in modern science. What's the use of 2000-year-old codes, right? So, between these two extremes, what is suppressing, what is being suppressed, what is being suffocated is the question why. And I am sure a lot of people, including the people in this room, have this question why somewhere deep down the psyche, but which was never answered. Because there is no room for answers, because one does not entertain questions, the other does not entertain answers, right? So, I will start the main part of today's presentation with a story. The story is about Indra, the great deity of the Vedas. I am sure everybody must know about Indra. So, the story is that the Devas, their main teacher is Brihaspati, but they had another teacher called Vishwarupa, who was the son of Twastar. But this Vishwarupa was also related to Asuras. So, Indra felt that the oblations that he was supposed to receive, this Vishwarupa was diverting it to the Asuras. So, Indra became angry. He did not think it was necessary to, investigate. He was impulsive. He is Indra, Devendra, right? So, he became angry and he went straight away to Vishwarupa and he cut his head off. He slayed him. But Vishwarupa was a Brahmana. Vishwarupa was a teacher. So, there was this Brahmahatya, the slaying of the Brahmana, the Papam. It is not a sin. Sin is a very Abrahamic, heavy concept. We do not have that in our Hindu tradition. We have the concept of Papam, the Karma Phala, the fruit of action, the fruit of Adharma or fruit of Dharma. So, this Papam, the fruit of Adharma, the fruit of the Hatya of Brahmana, Brahmahatya, attached to Indra. He tried for 10 years or so to get rid of it, but he failed. Wherever he went, people called him killer of Brahmana, murderer, slayer of Brahmana. So, he was very sad. He did not know what to do because he also had an understanding of Dharma because he is Indra, right? So, he knew that he did wrong. He knew that he had to get rid of this, Papam somehow. So, he thought, what shall I do? How shall I get rid of it? 10 years I have roamed here and there, but I am still stuck with it. Then he remembered Bhumi Devi, the earth, Mother Earth. She is compassionate, she is selfless. You can see her, we are so much violating her. Still, she bears us, she has epitome of forbearance. So, she went to her, said, see Mother Earth, Bhumi Devi, I am very suffering from this great, Papam, the guilt of Brahmahatya. Can you please help me? Can you please take just 1/3 of the guilt, 1/3 of the Papam, not the whole thing, just free me from the burden of just 1/3 of it. Bhumi Devi, she was selfless, of course, compassionate. So, she said, okay, let me take it. And this 1/3 of the guilt of this, Brahmahatya passed to Bhumi and it manifested as natural fissures. In return, Indra said, thank you very much. Now you can ask me any boon. I am Indra, I can grant you any boon. Tell me now how can I help you in return? Because I am very grateful to you. Please tell me how I can, return your favor. She said, see the digging, people keep digging me and it hurts me. Let me know how to overcome it. So Indra said, he said, okay, I'll give you a boon. My boon is that this digging will no longer harm you. With time, all the digging and everything, it will close down on its own. You don't have to worry. It will not overcome you. It will not harm you from this day. But still Indra suffered 2/3 of the guilt, and 2/3 is no less. It's still huge. Then he thought of whom shall I approach next. He saw a tree. He saw the trees, in fact. Like Bhumi, trees are selfless beings. They give shade, they give fruits, they give flowers. They don't ask anything, right? They don't even ask us to put water to them, right? So he appealed to them the same way he did for Bhumi Devi. She said, okay. She agreed. And the guilt, the another 1/3 of the guilt manifested in the trees as the sap, the tree sap. In return, again Indra said, what boon do you want? And the tree said, see, look, the pruning, it hurts me. Help me there. So Indra said, okay, from now on the pruning will not hurt you. In fact, pruning from time to time will help you grow more. But still he was left with 1/3 of the guilt. Finally, he came to women. The epitome of, again, compassion, motherhood, selflessness, right? So he came, he said, again, please take the remaining 1/3 of the guilt and free me from this Brahmahatya forever. Women agreed, okay, fine, I will do it. And this, the final 1/3 guilt of Brahmahatya, the papam, transferred to women, and it manifested as stained garment every month. That is, it manifested as menstrual bleeding at the end of each month. In return, they asked, women asked a boon. Indra gave the boon. The boon was that women will be able to bear children. They will be able to, conceive children after the end of this bleeding. And then until the child is born, they will be able to enjoy sexual bliss. After saying this story, where the story appears, this interesting story is from Yajurveda, Taittiriya Samhita. This is from the Shruti, the Veda itself. After giving this full account of the story, the Yajurveda says, therefore one should not, because women have taken this 1/3 of the guilt, one should not converse with a woman with stained garments, one should not sit with her, one should not eat her food, because she emits the color of guilt. One should not have intercourse with menstruating women, because offsprings born may be accursed. Other things to avoid by menstruating women will include bathing, anointing oneself, combing, brushing, nail cutting, weaving, spinning, etc. so on and so forth. So this is the whole story that is present in Yajurveda. Why I started with this story, it may look, you may think, what is this, who is this Indra, how is it even relevant, what is this story, what is this papam, etc. I will come to that. The relevance of this story is that story acts as, origin cause. It provides some hermeneutic principles. The whole account can be divided into two parts. The story narrative, the second is the list of menstruation restrictions. The story narrative, the purpose of the story, it's not a historical event or something. The purpose of the story is to provide a hermeneutics key, a key for interpretation, a key to understand the menstruation restrictions, the menstruation practices mentioned in the second half of the story. So the account acts as a, it provides a basis. In the philosophy, in the Western tradition, they have a particular term, I think etiographic myth or something. So that is the purpose of the story, the Indra, etc., to provide a basis for interpretation. How should we understand, to answer this question, that how should we understand Hindu menstruation practices? So what is the very first thing that the story revealed? Remember that in the earth it manifested as, the guilt manifested as natural fissure, in the trees it manifested as a sap, and in women it manifested as menstrual bleeding. So what is one common element between three of them? It is that all of them are a natural phenomena. The fissure is a natural phenomenon, the sap is a natural phenomenon, and similarly the menstrual bleeding, the menstrual cycle is a natural phenomenon, it is a biological phenomenon. So the very core of Hindu menstrual practices is this understanding that menstruation is not a supernatural thing, it is a natural biological phenomenon, right? But of course the story does not stop at it. We saw that 1/3 Brahmatya. So what does this 1/3 Brahmatya mean? What is the reference to this 1/3 of Brahmatya? To understand it, let us see what this menstruation. We know the biology tells us there is a non-fertilization of the egg. It's not bleeding. The bleeding is not just blood, right? There is the endometrium tissue, there is the unfertilized egg, right? What is that? What is the purpose of the egg? To give life. The purpose of the egg, the whole biological process is to help women conceive. But when that egg remains unfertilized, the non-fertilization means the life, the one chance for giving birth was missed. Why is giving birth important? In the entire Hindu tradition, giving birth is considered very highly sacred, very highly punya, the dharmic activity which is enormous merit. Why? Because the birth, it's not just making babies as we call it today, it's not making babies, just that. It is a giving chance for a jiva who is waiting, the process, that this is not just single time birth. The Hindu tradition believes of the rebirth again and again until one attains moksha, but the moksha is the ultimate goal, but they have to travel through many births to attain it. So each birth is important in the life of a jiva. And this jiva, one jiva, some jiva with whom you have a karmic connection, you have a connection like the son or a daughter or something, you are giving an opportunity to that jiva to take birth into this physical universe and then manifest and then travel ahead to fulfill its karmic journey, to travel much closer to moksha. So this birth is a very important thing. Giving birth is considered a highly dharmic activity for this reason, because you are helping jivas to continue that karmic journey. So how can we, what are the circumstances when this is prevented? One is the abortion. When you voluntarily decide that you do not want the baby. The abortion is compared to Brahmatya in the tradition. Why? What is this Brahmatya? We need to understand. What is this Brahmanatya? Today, Brahmins, caste, what is this Brahminical thing, you may think. Brahmatya must be understand how the tradition defines Brahmana. Brahmana is one of the Smritis, Manu Smriti to be specific says, Brahmana is one who is friend to everybody. He is one from whom nobody has to fear, because he will not hurt anybody either in thought, speech or mind or actions, right? And Brahmana is one who is truthful, who is non-violent, who is always controlled in his senses, who will never commit a crime, who will never commit any immoral things. So there is a whole lot of description what a Brahmana is. Brahmana is one who has understood Brahman. He is the innocent personified. So when it is said Brahmatya is a huge papam, it only refers to the fact that slaying such an innocent person is huge papam. And the child, unborn child, is equally innocent in this sense, and hence abortion is a huge papam and it is equated to Brahmatya. But there is one more way how you can deny the jiva entrance into the physical world, and that is when at the end of the monthly cycle there is no conception. Of course, it is not the fault of any person as such. The cycle starts at 10 years, you get married later, that is a different issue. The thing is, it's a biological process, and intentionally or unintentionally, there is one fact that there was non-fertilization of the egg, and hence one opportunity for some jiva was denied from taking birth. So there is a papam, but it is not equal to that of magnitude of abortion, of course. The magnitude is here just 1/3 Brahmatya. The Indra story, the purpose of the story is to give out this hermeneutic principle that this menstruation cycle involves a concept of ashaucha because caused by non-fertilization of egg, which the story refers as color of the guilt. The guilt here is that non-fertilization of the egg. Ashaucha is translated as impurity. I will come to that what it means, because that is a very important and highly misunderstood concept. So this story gives the hermeneutic principle, the interpretation, the concept that Ashaucha is something that is associated with menstruation. Third, but it does not, the story does not stop with saying, no, women have become, color of guilt have attached to them. No, it does not stop there. It says that the story is all about how this menstruation itself acts as a self-purification process, and it acts as austerity, because every month they attain that state again and again. It is only possible when at the end of the periods they are able to overcome that state of Ashaucha. If there is no overcoming, then what is the meaning of saying every month they attain Ashaucha again and again? So they overcome it. So menstruation itself acts as a process to overcome it. That is the principle of self-purification. And there is aspect of rest, no weaving, no sieving, these are all the activities. And finally, by connecting the fact that women took the guilt in the form of monthly menstrual cycle, that the bleeding, but in return they were able to give birth to children after the end of that bleeding. So it's showing the biological connection through a story that this menstruation process is connected to childbirth. Without this menstruation cycle, the whole monthly cycle, women will not be able to give birth. So childbirth is intimately connected to menstruation, and because childbirth is a dharmic, is a sacred, is a very important activity, menstruation is worth celebrating. So there is Ashaucha, there is austerity, there is rest, there is self-purification, and there is celebration. Now let us see each of these principles and understand what they actually mean. Menstruation in Sanskrit, it is called as Rajashrava. Raja, Shrava. Shrava is flow of Raja. But what is Raja? Raja is usually translated as blood. But Raja is also what? Rajoguna. You have in Gita and other places the three gunas, right? Sattva, Tamas, Rajas. Sattva is equanimity and etc. Tamas is dullness, inertia. Rajas is passion. Rajas is excitement. Rajas is activity. So, Rajas is Rajashrava is flow of blood, but it is also a flow of Rajas, and therein lies the key to entire understanding what menstruation is, how Hindu tradition perceive menstruation. To take up the first concept of Ashaucha, we all know, we all see Ashaucha is impurity, they makes people demeaning, it's demeaning to women, etc., right? But by the end, I will show how this Ashaucha have a very technical meaning. It is not very lightly to be used. One of the implication of Ashaucha is ritual impurity. The ritual is the important term. Second is connected to it is incompetency for performing Vaidika and Agama karmas. Vaidika Agama karmas are, Vaidika is Veda, Agamas are another text similar to Vedas. All the practices, Hindu practices, religious practices that we call puja, temple worship, everything is derived from these Vedas and Agamas. So called as Vaidika karma, Agama karma, these are all the duties, right? So what is Shaucha? To understand a Shaucha, we have to understand Shaucha, right? To understand impurity, we have to first define what is purity. Today, most of the, all our understanding is based on modern science. We say we have a physical body, and even our mind is denied independent existence. They say the brain activity makes us think. But this is not how our Hindu tradition understands, this is not how our rishis, the scientists of the past, this is not how they, understood the human body, human individuality. Even Ayurveda does not recognize this. What we recognize instead is the 5 sheets, the 5 layers of individualities. I am not just my physical body. I also have a vital pranic sharira. I also have a mind, the manasa, manomaya kosha, and there is vijnanamaya kosha, there is anandamaya kosha, the sheath of intellect, the sheath of, the bliss. The translations are very, it doesn't convey the real meaning, but just bear with me. What is important for our day-to-day activity is the 3 layers. Annamaya kosha, the physical thing, the vital or the pranayama kosha, the layer of energy, the life force, you know, what we call is breathing, it's prana. We have a better technical term than just breathing. We just simply don't breathe air. Even the air goes inside a dead body, but it is not alive, right? There is something in that air, there is something behind that air that makes someone live and someone dead, right? So that is the life energy, that is the prana, right? So this pranamaya kosha, and there is the manomaya kosha, the mind, the thinking, the thought, the whole process. So these are the three things that manifest day-to-day life in our lives. So these are that affects us. So these three layers of individuality, we have to understand the shaucha and ashaucha, purity, impurity in this context. What is shaucha in this context? In the physical, you can say hygiene. Yes, of course, hygiene is a thing. But how do we define hygiene? The opposite of hygiene, you know, the excretions. It may be sweat, it may be urine, it may be stool, it may be blood. We consider all these things are unhygienic. We don't let it lay around everywhere, right? So that is the physical aspect, and that is not everything. In the level of the pranas, we have the 5 pranas: prana, apana, vyana, udana, samana. You can see the details, you know, online on the yogic texts, etc. So this balance of these 5, you know, they all have a particular activity, particular role in our body. It's not, they are all interconnected. So when they are in balance, it is called a shaucha, because balanced prana also balances the mind, keeps the mind calm. This calmness of the mind is again shaucha. And what is the role of shaucha? It gives competency for performing religious and spiritual activities. Why? Shaucha is considered one of the samanya dharma, common duties for everybody. And in all the paths in Sanatana Dharma, be it bhakti, be it Vedanta, any path, be it yoga, shaucha is one of the basic things. In the Yoga Sutta, you have the niyamas, the basic rules, you have shaucha. In bhakti, they say shaucha is important. In all these, shaucha is important because one of the Smriti texts beautifully captures this by says, for all activity with shaucha, without shaucha, all your actions become useless, fruitless. So even for example, medical operation, you need a physical hygiene, right? This is a parallel. So consider the spiritual actions, religious activity, the spiritual dharmic activity, it will require shaucha at all the 3 levels of physical, vital and mind. The opposite is ashaucha. In the context of menstruation, what is the one thing that causes physical shaucha? It is the blood, the menstrual blood. Of course, the blood does not mean simply blood. Menstrual blood includes the endometrium tissue, the vaginal secretions and all other things. And Ayurveda says the menstrual blood also removes ama. Ama is the Ayurvedic term for body toxins. It removes the body toxins from the body. So these are all the impurities at the physical level. That is ashaucha. At the pranamaya kosha, the pranic level, I said rajas shrava, flow of rajas. There is a excess rajasic energy which was built up anticipating conception. The apayana vayu is very increased, anticipating conception, and that is being removed. The rajasic energy which was built up anticipating conception, so that has to nourish the baby if conception happens. That energy now it has become excess, it has become no use because the fertilization did not happen. So it has to be thrown out. This throwing out of rajas, this heightened condition of rajas, which shows that there is an imbalance of energy at the pranic level, is the ritual impurity at the pranic level. And then at manomaya kosha, all women, you have all yourself experienced this. There is mood swings, there is anger, there is irritation. Many of you might experience it sometimes, many of you may not experience all the time. But all of them experience that one stage or other, that during your periods, the mood, it's not calm. There is always one or the other things on your mind, you are not calm. So these 3 things, when I speak, or when the Hindu tradition says that menstruation is an ashaucha, it refers to all the 3 things, not just a hygiene part, but all the 3 things at 3 levels. That makes it ashaucha. So what does it mean to make it ashaucha? The context here is the competency. What ashaucha does is it makes certain actions become unsuitable. women become unsuitable for certain actions like puja, like entering a temple. Why? I'll come to that later. But why? I may as well say it in short now itself, because there is a flow of energy, and this flow of energy from the women's body may interact and may dilute the energy that is arising from the the puja itself, because puja is an energetic activity, it's a transformation of energy, it's not simply a congregation, right? But the second point is, it also makes certain people become unsuitable for certain actions. So there is two things: people become unsuitable for certain actions, and certain actions become unsuitable. Certain actions, there are two-way effect. One, there is a unsavory effect on the women themselves, which is not good for health, it is not good for their living, and another is they were not competent to perform certain actions. That is what the ashaucha is. Why they are not competent? Because of the blood, because of the rajasic energy, because of the internal passion. For doing a puja, for doing a bhakti, Vedanta, yoga or anything, these three are required. There should be a balance of pranas, calmness of mind, hygiene. It is not there, non-presence of them means they are not competent for that actions. But if they perform it, it may also have unsavory effect on their body. The inner, I will deal it in the Ayurvedic portion, how the energy, any spiritual activity, it will tend to rise your apana upwards, but in menstruation apana flows downwards, and this can play havoc on the biological activity inside a woman. If you think that this is something unique to women, because many people say ashaucha, impurities associated with women, it makes them, it is very unfair, it is demeaning to them. But as I explained, there is nothing demeaning, it is just an understanding of how different processes work, how different bodies work. But is ashaucha unique to women? No. Both men and women enter ashaucha at different times. A man, he may have, a accident and his blood may be flowing from his leg. He is considered as ashaucha, unfit to perform certain actions, unfit to perform certain religious functions. Similarly, at the time of a death of a relative, father, mother, brother, men and women both enter ashaucha. It's not just an issue of women. And all flow of blood, whether due to menstruation or injury, is considered ashaucha. But particularly in the case of menstruating women, the ashaucha is main portion, the main part is due to her heightened condition of rajas. The heightened condition of rajas, which creates imbalance in pranas, which makes her incompetent for certain actions. Restrictions against cooking, physical touch, sexual intimacy, they have been given due to this consideration of ashaucha, because all these activities, cooking, etc., involve transmission of rajasic energy. Ashaucha makes them incompetent for these spiritual activities. Next comes to the self-purification. No understanding of ashaucha, or so-called impurity, will be complete without understanding the other side of the coin, without completing the whole narrative that menstruation is not just associated with ashaucha, though it is associated with ashaucha, it does not make women impure. Instead, menstruation itself is a self-purification process, and as you can see in the chart, it purifies women at a different level. There is a physical level purification, it removes the ama, the body toxins, it removes the blood, vaginal secretions, endometrial tissue that is no longer needed by the body. At pranic level, it removes the excess rajasic energy and brings balance to the pranamaya kosha inside the body. It brings balance to tridoshas, vata, pitta and kapha, and it also purifies from the adharmic actions. It purifies women from the adharmic thoughts. We have a authority of one of the Smriti. It purifies one from impure speech. Impure speech means the speech wherein we speak harsh, we speak lies, we speak falsehood, we speak to hurt somebody, such things. And it says at the physical level, it removes 1/3 brahmahatya due to non-fertilization of egg. Additionally, menstruation also can be understood as a process which provides a mechanism to to help women to overcome the feeling of violation, overcome the feeling of dishonor that they may undergo when they are, have to face the unfortunate incidents like rape, sexual assault, etc. Now you may say, how is this? Because it is a process, it is a natural process, and these are the results of this process. At best, the modern science can speak about this physical portion, but since their tools, they are limited to the materials, physical universe, they cannot speak about other things. How do we know other things then? From Ayurveda, from our texts like Shruti Smriti, from the accounts of our rishis, who have had intimate knowledge on all these things. What is interesting is, well, today society, including Indian society at large, it stigmatizes the rape victims. We often hear whenever rape happens, some politician or the other asks, was she wearing a short skirt? As if implying that wearing the short skirt means she asked for it, right? On the other hand, our Dharma Shastra authors say, look, that women have suffered a lot. We need to help her to overcome that suffering, overcome that depression, overcome that stigma, overcome that feeling of violation. How to do that? Here, she has a natural process of menstruation. She should perceive it as a self-purification process, because it's already a self-purification process, and when she puts herself into that state and considers it an austerity and spends the 3 days as an austerity, then she can come out of it. You may say that it is all nonsense, but it is not. Why? Because the action of rape is also an action which had a deep impact on the psychology. Similarly, this menstruation, the austerities, the practices associated with it are also actions, and you perform it with a particular intention, particular mindset, and that action reinforces that mindset. The action works at the level of body, the mind, and the speech. So this menstruation is the whole cycle is a self-purification activity which purifies at different levels. But of course, that does not mean it's a free pass for women to commit any crimes, any adharma, and say, I have become purified. Of course, it does not mean that, because there is no prayashchitta for something like abortion or murdering of a husband or murdering somebody. What it means is, on the day-to-day basis, all of us, men, women, everybody commit very intentionally and unintentionally lot of adharma, small and large, at a physical, mental and speech level, and these small things can be purified, because even these small things can play havoc later when it comes out as a karma phala, because we are living, say, for 50 years, 60 years, multiply that into 360 days and multiply that into hours and minutes and seconds. Huge bundle of karma we are committing, and I don't know how many percentage it is of adharma. We don't know. We are not always capable to live dharmically 100%. It is not possible. So to help us, it's a solution. It's a nature provided solution to overcome all these small things. Interestingly, this Baudhana Dharma Sutta is one of the texts. What it says is, women possess an unrivaled means of purification. They never become impure. For month to month, their temporary uncleanness removes their sins, that is papam. So what it means is, contrary to our present narrative and understanding that saying women enters a period of impurity or ashaucha makes them impure or demeaning to them, what the Shastra or the Hindu tradition is saying that this entering temporary ashaucha does not make them impure. In fact, on the contrary, it makes them ever pure. One of the texts says that women are pure in all the limbs, they are ever pure. Another text I have quoted here, you can see how the Soma, Gandharva, Agni all associated with menstruation. Soma means moon, and menstruation is deeply connected with all the cultures, not just Sanatana Dharma. They said they purify them in physical, speech and mental level. So the gist is, what comes by special effort to men comes as part of natural process to women. What is the special effort? Men don't have menstruation. We don't have a ready-made available thing monthly, where we all our, small papams we commit can be purified. We have to do other activities. We may have to do Sandhya Vandana, we may have to perform samskaras, we may have to do japa, tapa, n number of activities we may have to do to achieve that. Women just have to bleed once a month. That menstruation itself is a austerity, itself is a self-purification process, and the impact of that self-purification process is multiplied many number of times if you also adopt a lifestyle which is austere. Austerity means tapasya. Tapasya means basically tapa means heat. What it means is hard work. In a spiritual context, tapas refers to Indriya Nigra. Indriya Nigra means control of the mind and the senses. You like some food, you control your mind. You like ice cream. Whenever you are a shopaholic, but you control yourself from purchasing, you control yourself from eating something. That is Indriya Nigraha. It does not mean suppression, it means restrainment. There is a difference. So similarly, this many upasanas, vratas, all these are different aspects of different types of austerity. If you consider here menstruation as austerity and self-purification, adopt this lifestyle. How to adopt this lifestyle? The practices like sexual abstinence, that is brahmacharya, that is one of the greatest aspect of tapasya. Not make-upping, not anointing oneself. Women like to make up, that is a given, right? Maybe there may be exceptions, but not doing that, not doing what you love, that is restrainment, that is Indriya Nigraha. Not sleeping on the bed. We all like our bed, we all like our comfortable sleeping on the bed, but not sleeping on it, sleeping on the floor or a mat or something, that is control of your senses or your mind. Not sleeping during daytime, not combing, etc. These are the lifestyle practices which further assists the menstruation as a purification process. It helps to control one's desire, develop detachment. So this is the aspect of austerity. Then there is the rest aspect, which I already said. Many of the practices like no cooking, no physical exertion through sports, these all things, the basis is that the desire that menstruating women should take rest. They should not exert themselves. Why? Because Ayurveda suggests, in Ayurveda they speak about how this imbalance, doshas become imbalanced when menstruating women indulge in lot of physical exertion. It plays havoc on the biological health of the person. And why celebrate menstruation? That is another important thing. I already said menstruation is connected to childbirth. Without menstruation, the capacity to birth would not have existed. So this birth is very dharmic activity that is worth celebrating. So menarche rituals, called in Sanskrit as Ritukala Samskara, it is celebrated different ways in different places. In Karnataka they call it Aarti. The girl, the married women from the neighborhood was called. They are asked to do the Mangalarti to the women as if she is a goddess, and then some food is given to her, new dress is given to her. So different places do it in a different way. So what this menarche ritual denotes is a transition of a girl from Kumari to Kanya, and this runs parallel with the process of Upanayana for men, the boys, from child to brahmachari. People say women, why don't women do Upanayana? They did in a very old age, but I think somewhere down the line it was felt they already have menstruation to attain purification. What Upanayana does, there are different purposes of Upanayana, but one of them is purification. The Sandhyavandana, Trikala Sandhyavandana, what they say, they have to worship that Sandhyavandana because it gives purification. The first half of the Sandhyavandana is all about purification. But women are already achieving it through menstruation, so that is being celebrated. That is the transition phase. Menstruation make them eligible to enter Grihastha Ashrama and facilitate them to perform their Stri Dharma, including entering motherhood, which are unique to them. So just as men, what is Grihastha means? Householder life. Like, what does the role of householder? Men become fathers, husbands. These are all our duties in the context of household. Women's role is becoming mothers, wives, etc. It's a counterpart. So menstruation makes women eligible for this grihastha ashrama. So that is why celebration is important. But more important than all this is the fact that celebration imparts a very positive perception about menstruation to a young girl. She is new to that, she doesn't know why she suddenly started bleeding. She may confuse, she may be afraid. How to make her cope with that? You make her the center of attention. You treat her like a special person, you treat her like a deity. You welcome her, the girl, into womanhood with open hands. It helps her to appreciate various menstrual practices and their importance as well. Of course, you may say that this is not how it is being practiced today in many families. They simply speak about impurity, etc., and they say you have to stay in that room, no explanation, nothing. But that is a degradation, that is a giving up of what the ideal is, imparted in the tradition. Tradition says it is a very, purification, it's a very celebrating thing, it's a very positive thing. But you have forgotten that, that is why you are doing it wrongly. Doing it wrongly, you do not cut the head off for a fever, right? You rectify the fever, you do not cut the head off. So these practices give a positive perception, and add to this the fact that Hindus consider their goddesses as menstruation and celebrate festivals in honor of them. There is a festival, Kamakya, well known festival in Assam. The Kamakya festival, I think Ambubachi it is called, where the goddess undergoes yearly menstruation for 3 days and she is given a rest. In Odisha, you have a festival for Harchandi called as Raja. The name itself is Raja, menstruation in Odisha. And we have certain festivals across India for the Bhumi Devi. Earth is considered going, menstruation process for few days, once a year. It happens in Karnataka also. This Karnataka festival is called Kedasa among Tulu community. But who is that? Is there a deity who presides over menstruation in Hindu Dharma? Yes, it is Parvati or Durga. In fact, during Ritukala Samskara that I spoke about, the Dharma Sindhu, the guideline speaks about doing a puja for Gauri, goddess Gauri. And then we have Parvati or Durga who is intimately connected to it. We just saw this Navaratri, the 9 days there are 9 deities of 9 forms of Durga, right? Shailaputri, Brahmacharini, Chandraghanta. The first 5 forms are connected to 5 phases of a girl's life. Shailaputri, the child, Putri, the daughter of the mountain, Brahmacharini, Brahmacharya, the Kanya, she is the deity of menstruation, the menarche, she presides over it. Chandraghanta is the marriage. She takes on the Chandra like her husband, Shiva, because she marries him, becomes one with him, her Ardhangi, the half. Then Kushmanda, Anda refers to the pregnancy, the Brahmanda, Kushmanda. And the Skanda Mata, after the pregnancy comes motherhood. So this whole thing, the whole thing is a sacred process. It's a biological process, yes, but it is also a sacred process. This is governed by various deities. But before the wrapping up, what is important to understand is that the Ayurveda, this is one of the things that is most less highlighted in any discussion. In fact, even the people who practice this menstruation practices, they have forgotten that there is a rational Ayurvedic element to most of the menstruation practices that is mentioned in Vedas, Dharma Shastras or any other text. Ayurveda recognizes menstruation as a physiological process governed by the Tridoshas. I spoke about Tridosha, Vata, Pitta and Kapha. Vata refers to all the activities inside as movement. The prana, apana, all these activities is Vata. Pitta is related to digestion and other related activities. Kapha is related to accumulation. These are different activities, biological activities, and these are governed by different forces inside our body, different biological such forces. So Ayurveda defines health in terms of balance of these doshas and illness in terms of imbalance in them. So it divides the whole monthly cycle into 3 phases: Ritukala, Ritu Vyatita Kala, Rajasrava Kala. Rajasrava Kala is the actual menstruation wherein it is dominated by Vata. Vata means Apanavayu, the force, the Vayu, the energy that is pushing out the things downwards. Ritu Kala prepares the body for ovulation. It's predominated by Kapha. Ritu Vyatita Kala refers to secretory phase, where nutrients are secreted in anticipation of the ovulation. When the ovulation does not happen, then comes this Rajasrava Kala. So, today we feel that the modern narrative is that having pain during menstruation, cramps, pain, etc. is a normal thing. But Ayurveda says that is not a normal thing. Normal menstruation is one which is painless, which is without any burning sensation, and which is neither scanty, the blood flow is neither scanty nor very excessive. But today we have somewhat forgotten that there is something called as normal menstruation. We feel that having pain itself is normal. The reason is our lifestyle has caused so much imbalance to the doshas that most women experience pain more or less always. So normal menstruation occurs when doshas are in proper balance. Sushruta Samhita says abnormal menstruation is when there is disturbed vayu, that is vata, pittam and kapha and blood, they are all disturbed condition, and this disturbing in doshas now affects the health, the biological, the physical health of the women, and also hampers their ability to conceive, to give birth. To remedy this, Ayurveda prescribes a series of do's and don'ts during menstruation called as Rajaswala Paricharya. Paricharya is the lifestyle. What lifestyle should women adopt during their 3 days of monthly periods? Charaka Samhita summarizes this and says, on the onset of menstruation for 3 days and nights, the women should observe celibacy, should sleep on the ground, take food with the hands from an unbroken utensil, and should not cleanse her body in any way. This has been, elaborated. I have prepared this chart. This chart is actually given in one of the papers, academic paper. I have given the reference at the bottom. These are the list of the do's and don'ts. I spoke about celibacy, no celibacy, sleeping on kusha mattress or sleeping on the mat or something, not on the bed. Should eat meal, very light meal, preferably made of ghee, shali rice, milk or something like a very light, which is easy to digest and which should be in a very light amount, and the food should be directly eaten over palms, not to use metal utensils, and concentrate on auspicious thing. This thing is very interesting. The eating prescriptions, the basis of this eating prescription, they'll take light food and take very small quantity. It is because during menstruation the body is in such a condition it cannot digest heavy food. This condition in Ayurveda is called as Agni Mandya, that is the digestive fire of the body is very weak, Mandya is weak. So you should not give it heavy food, not give it junk food, not give it meat and such things. You take very light food like shali rice, the Havishya Anna they say. Havishya Anna is the light food that you give in a yagya, the fire, right? And you take it less amount. There are other things, this celibacy, etc. All these things have been mentioned to control, to prevent imbalance of your doshas. The whole table, the only reason is to protect the health of the women by preventing imbalance of dosha. You sleep during the daytime, you adorn yourself, take bath, anointment, massage, all these affects the Agni Mandya further. It affects the health practices, no long conversations, combing, etc. And how does this effect manifest? When your whole biological cycle is upset, later whenever you conceive children, if you keep not a just one time event, if you keep doing this again and again, every cycle by cycle this imbalance keeps happening again and again, then the extreme result of it would be such that when you conceive, the children born may have normalities. Not that in every case the listed normalities have happened. These are observations documented over large period and written down. These are the most likely happens in the extreme case. But even apart from that, there will be other kind of health effects if there is an imbalance of doshas. So this Ayurvedic factor is something which is not at all taken into account. Apart from Agni Mandya, there is also the aspect of Shodhana. The Shodhana is a procedure in Ayurveda which cleanses the body. So even Ayurveda is clearly recognizing menstruation as a Shodhana because it prescribes the same kind of daily practices for menstruation, Rajasvala Paricharya, that is prescribes for a Shodhana procedure. The 8 practices, they are same. The details you can refer to my articles that I have written. So it is a purification process. It's recognized by even Ayurveda. And then there is also an aspect of injury. There is a endometrial tissues are removed from your body. So it is considered as a state of injury that needs healing. And this restriction, the table, it also takes care of it. It also takes care of it because there are parallels with the practices mentioned there. And the practices given for a person who is injured, who has been operated, and how he should take rest, etc. So, finally, after understanding these principles of Ashaucha, self-purification process, austerity, celebration, Ayurvedic considerations, etc., let us relook at the first chart in the first slide I gave and really relook at each of these points. The first point was no sexual intercourse. This has been suggested in Yajurveda, in Smritis like Angirasa, in Ayurvedic texts like Sushruta Samhita, and the governing principles are Ashaucha, austerity, health concerns as per Ayurveda. Maybe Ashaucha and austerity may not appeal to you, but can we really ignore the health concerns that is so intimate, so immediate, that is perceivable, right? The concept of Ashaucha I already explained. The sexual activity, it involves exchange of energy. There is excess of rajas and this results, it says that because Ashaucha can be transferred, because excess of rajas can be transmitted to each other, it is from the Ashaucha point of view, sexual intimacy is prohibited, it is advised against. But similarly, even from austerity point of view, any tapasya means sexual abstinence. That is a basic Indriya Nigra because we are all too much attached to sex. Health concerns, if you, I already said, there will be an imbalance in doshas if you have sexual intercourse during menstruation. So this imbalance of doshas can manifest in n number of ways by hurting your health. The second point listed was no running, no exercises, no kitchen and household activities. Again mentioned in various Smritis, Ayurvedic texts. The main principle is rest. If you do not take rest, means you are indulging in physical exertion. This physical exertion causes the imbalance of dosha. You run too much, you do too much exercise, the pain, the vata, the principle, the apanavayu, it may get blocked. There will be imbalance resulting from them. There will be huge pain. There will be other effects as well. The second principle about the kitchen thing, the not cooking, is the Ashaucha again, because what is food? Food is a carrier of energy, and menstruation is a heightened state of rajas. So you will simply transmit that energy to the food, and that food is again eaten by anybody who eats. You will be taking on that energy, because what is a food is a carrier of energy, right? No bathing and other self-adorning activities mentioned in various Ayurvedic texts, Vasishtha Dharma Sutras, Yajurveda. So why I have listed these things are, these activities, they have a long tradition from the Shruti, the Smriti, Ayurveda. There is a medical aspect, there is a dharmic aspect, and there is the Shruti, the Pramana as well, because for everything in Hindu tradition, the Shruti is the ultimate Pramana. The Shruti, the Vedas are the ultimate Pramana. The governing principle is again austerity and imbalance of doshas, the Ayurvedic. Austerity, I have already explained many things. You are attached, we are attached to, we like to groom ourselves. So you don't groom yourself as an austere process, as a means of self-restrainment. And this austerity, this grooming, bathing, having massage, etc., it seriously affects the weakened Agni, the digestive fire. It further weakens it. So there will be serious digestive issues may happen. Then there is the segregation. The fourth point was not touching others. See, we do not have any specific prescription saying that women should be segregated anywhere in any of the texts. But what we do have are certain advices related certain activities to be avoided, like don't touch anybody, because touching is again a transmission of energy, and not cooking, not working, etc. That when we implement it in the ground, some amount of segregation will happen. In Nepal and even in rural India, these menstruation huts were constructed where women used to spend there during their periods. So, as an aside, this menstruation huts have been considered as oppressive towards women in all the academic and media literature. On the other hand, in the West, in the US, there is something called as red tent movement, which has come up in last few years, I think, wherein women go separate from their families and go there, spend their 3 days of periods, and they call it liberating. The same thing which is done in a native tradition is oppressive. When the same thing is done by the so-called liberated feminists in the West, it becomes even more liberating. Keeping that aside, so the fact is, this not touching, etc., the elements of segregation, this governing principle is basically rest. You take rest, you sit in a room, take rest, don't indulge in too much activity, do whatever, like read a book, right? Read a book. You may watch a movie but keep the volume down, because high volume will again cause imbalance in dosha, etc. The second principle is austerity. The third is ashaucha. And the restriction regarding food I have already explained. The Ayurveda is the main thing. Your body is not ready to digest huge amount of quantity. It is not ready to digest heavy foods. It is not ready to digest junk foods. So you have to avoid it. You have to take very light food, as much light as possible, and in as little amount as possible. Because since your body is weak, it can be digested easily. You can also take substances like hing, black salt, etc., which are good for igniting the digestive fire, making it strong, little bit better for digesting, says the Ayurvedic text. I am not saying, the Ayurveda says. And this is the most important, I think, of all the things in the current times. Restrictions related to performance of religious and spiritual activities, including visiting temples. There is a mention in Angirasa Smriti, Vasishtha Dharma Sutra, etc. This is a purely religious and spiritual tenet. Ayurveda does not mention it because its concern is health. But Ayurvedic principles will be used here also. Why? Because menstruation, as I said, is a heightened state of rajas. I explained what does this heightened state of rajas means. Let us understand the principle of a puja or a yoga or any spiritual process. That is very important. People do not have understanding this. People think temple is like a synagogue or a church or a mosque where people simply gather together. No, the temple is not a it's not a place of congregation. It is a kshetram. Kshetram means a place of energy, energy center. So the murti there, that there is a prana pratishtapana have happened. The deity, the energy and the essence of the deity have been invoked in the temple. So there is one aspect of essence, there is one aspect of energy. So the deity of the energy is there. And in any other process, spiritual process, it may be yoga, it may be puja, it may be yagya, any spiritual process, what happens is, it causes the Apanavayu to rise upwards. There is a raising upwards of the Apanavayu, because the spiritual process, the purpose is to raise the Apanavayu upward and make it merge with the Pranavayu, which will then arouse the Kundalini and makes it rise towards your head, ultimately resulting in Samadhi and etc. In the so-called enlightenment, etc. So, but what is menstruation? It is completely reverse. it is throwing out the impurities, blood, etc. And the Apana Vayu is very strong, it is acting downwards. So there is a downward movement of Apana Vayu, and in this condition, if you perform a ritual, if you participate in a ceremony, if you enter a temple, the energy in the temple, the energy in the surroundings of the ritual will try to push it upwards. So the Apana Vayu wants to flow downwards, but the energy in the temple, etc., will try to push it upwards. So this will cause huge imbalance to the doshas, because Apana Vayu is nothing but the Vata dosha, they are connected there. So this will cause huge imbalance to the doshas. This imbalance can havoc in the biological process. You may say, oh no, I attended this puja, I did not feel anything. Of course, it may not happen in a single visit, right? What will happen if you keep doing it again and again? It will, it keeps happening at a very subtle level. The effects of it, which may not be easily, not immediately available. In fact, the thing is, even if the effect become immediately manifest, you will not actually connect at all the same, because today we feel that all periods we have pain, right? So that's a normal thing. So if you enter a temple and suddenly the pain starts, you will simply say, oh, that pain, it's a coincidence, they're not related. So even if it manifests, you may not connect to it, because our current understanding itself, it's all skewed, it's all distorted. But Ayurveda is a medical system which has been active for more than 2,000–3,000 years, and it has cured thousands of people. And just like we have faith in allopathy system, all our people, still today people are taking Ayurvedic systems of therapy, right? So it will be foolish to say that Ayurvedic system is whatever that it says, it has no value. So that is the basic reason for avoiding any entering temples, entering religious activity. One is the Ashaucha concepts makes one incompetent for those activities, but more importantly, it is also the concept aspect of health, which may be damaged in the process if one enters over a long period of time. Nothing happens in a one visit or two visit, right? So this is the last thing, the last slide. The most important question I feel, are they practical today? All what I said, all the practices like no sexual abstinence, no entering temples, no cooking, no bathing, no anointing, etc. Is this even practical? In a fast moving life, people work, people don't have time. But I think the answer is yes. Of course, this yes must be qualified. The qualification is that not everybody may be able to do everything. They may not need to also, but they may not even be able to. But what Gita says, I will end with it, that even a little practice of dharma saves one from great fear. So even a little practice of even some of the practices mentioned in the Hindu tradition, in the Ayurvedic text, in the Smriti and Shruti text, it will be a great benefit to women themselves. So why not practice even little, whatever is possible for each body. So I think it is a practical thing, but it is left to each one to decide how much of it is practical and when it is practical, and it's for them to decide. Thank you.